I went to Costco to find over 30 highest protein, lowest calorie foods, but some of the healthy ones here are actually terrible. So I ranked everything from
Huge scam to S tier item.
based on how much protein you can get per calorie and how much protein you can get for every dollar that you spend. And one of these actually beats chicken breast for protein per dollar. Let's expose the first one because it should be illegal.
Here we have our first scam of the day. These ones really piss me off. They're called No BS protein bars, but to be honest, it's full of BS. This protein bar has only 12 grams of protein, and you cannot say that a protein bar is 12 grams of protein. I can drink a glass of milk and get more protein than this.
And before anyone says that I'm being dramatic, let me show you the system. Here's the protein test. If you add a 0 to the protein and it's still higher than the calories per serving, it passes. 12 grams becomes 120, but this bar is over 200 calories, so it fails. And I didn't just guess. I built a full Excel spreadsheet comparing all 44 foods by calories, protein, servings, and protein per dollar so that this ranking is completely data driven. If a food passes the protein test and has an amazing protein per dollar ratio, it can make an A or even an S tier. But if it fails the protein test, it cannot rank higher than a B tier. Don't worry about it, and I'll show you the final ranking later. Now, let's see if the next one actually passes.
Now here we have another protein bar that does not pass the protein test, but for the grams of protein per dollar, they're really worth it. So for that reason, they get a B tier. Now here we have the Grenade protein bars. Unfortunately, they don't make the protein test, and they're my favorite. I even had one for lunch, but since they're pretty expensive, they have to go in the C tier, so I'm putting them back. Here we have the Pure protein bars. These bars are $25 for 18 bars, and they destroy the protein test, and they're actually very good in the grams of protein per dollar. So this would get an S tier, but the only problem is they really are mid. One way around that, you put them in the microwave for 15 seconds and they taste just like a chocolate cake. So this gets an A tier. I would put them in the basket, but A tier, not S tier.
Also, I'm not showing you the rankings in order, so you'll have to pay attention because only the S tier items get to be in the cart.
Here is one of the chunkiest protein bars on the market, the Builder's protein bar. 20 grams of protein per bar. They lose the protein test, but for the price, they're not that bad. They get a B tier because, to be honest, they're just too chunky and they take 30 minutes to eat. Here we have our first S tier item, the Premier protein shakes. They have 30 grams of protein for 160 calories. They're really cheap and they destroy the protein test. So I'm definitely putting those in my cart. Now we have the Robert Irvin's protein bars. These used to be worth it, but since gym inflation and everybody's obsessed with protein, these aren't worth it anymore because their price skyrocketed like Nvidia stock in 2023. So unfortunately, if these were cheaper, I would put them in my cart, but for now, they fall in C tier. Now here at Costco, we have the Mighty Protein Sticks. These are $20 for 12 sticks and 12 grams of protein. To be honest, the protein to calorie is not that bad, but would you actually eat this? This looks like it's made in a lab and this looks like food for my dog, so I'm not gonna eat this. And since my Excel is generous, it gives it a B tier. Here we have two protein powders. This one is a weird brand called Shinus Physic Protein Beef. It's kind of weird, but somehow this gets an S tier. The proteins is insane and the price is incredibly cheap. So I'm definitely putting this one in my cart. Unfortunately, the ON protein powder gets an A tier because it's slightly more expensive, but I think it tastes better. Now we have an interesting one here, the Big Daddy cookie. They're incredibly cheap. A full box is $6, but 400 calories per cookies is outrageous. But somehow these ones are incredibly cheap in the grams of protein per dollar. But of course, it's a cookie, so it doesn't get a good rating. But if you are to get one of these, get this one because this one has way less fat than the chocolate chip one. D tier. So here we have chicken thighs. They're really tasteful, but for $1 extra, you can get the chicken breast that has more protein and is cheaper in the grams of protein per dollar. So definitely get the chicken breast an S tier, so they go in the cart. But for the taste, this one deserves an A tier. Now here we have a very expensive item, lean ground veal, $50. The protein is not bad, but for $50, it's just not worth it. This goes into C tier. Here we have a very interesting and popular one, lean ground beef from Costco. It's a very good item and I like it personally, but I started hating it when I realized that 100 grams of this has 15 grams of fat. And for that reason, it kind of destroys the protein to fat ratio. So this doesn't get an A tier anymore, and I'll put it in the B tier. Now here we have a lot of fish, and it might sound intimidating when you want to cook them, but that's why I'll go show you an S tier item a bit later in this video. It's white fish, very easy to cook, and has almost 0 grams of fat. Now here we have a very controversial one. You might think that Pokeballs are extremely healthy and low calorie, but when you look at the macros, these have a lot of calories. 660 calories for this little bowl of Pokeball and only 20 grams of protein. So for that reason, this is definitely a scam. I would never buy this. So here we have Swiss cheese. One slice of this cheese has 8 grams of protein, which might sound like a life hack, but you gotta be careful, because one slice also has 4.5 grams of fat, which in a sandwich, if you put 3 slices, you're already up to 15 grams of fat. This is super dangerous, but if you eat them in moderation, easy B tier. Now here we have an interesting salad. For a salad, you might think this has 0 grams of protein, but quinoa salad actually has 10 grams of protein per serving. It's actually a cheat combined with a steak. 10 grams of protein, not that much, C tier, but for a steak and next to a steak, incredible. $18, damn. Also buco pork. This has 27 grams of protein for 160 calories. Very surprising. Not everybody likes pork, but if you do, this is instantly B tier. Now here we have chicken brochettes from West End. They almost have the same amount of macros as the ossobuco pork, but these would get an S tier if they beat the ratings, but unfortunately they don't, but they're super good for meal preps, very easy to do. I'd put these in B tier. Another meal prep cheat code, the ready-to-eat chicken breast from Fresh Additions. This comes down to $2 for 100 grams of protein, which is insane. And to be honest, they make my life so much easier when I meal prep. But since my Excel is very picky, this only gets a B tier. Here we have the item that beats the chicken breast protein ratio. It's the chicken meatballs. 40 meatballs, and if you're not careful, you might think that one meatball has 18 grams of protein, but it's actually for 3 meatballs, so you got to be careful when you look at that. But to be honest, these are better than the chicken that I just showed you, and this gets an A tier. Here we have fried chicken from Pinty's. This one has an amazing protein per dollar ratio, but in the protein per calories ratio, this is just not worth it. It's a D tier, but if you like chicken, fried chicken, it's worth it. But for now, my Excel is really picky. D tier. Here we have hot dog sausages. So when you go to your barbecue, you might think that you're actually getting a decent amount of protein when eating hot dogs, but in reality, you're only getting 10 grams per sausage, which is really not ideal. So stick around, because I'll show you an Italian sausage that you want to sit on. Now we have a pretty expensive item here, $30 for 4 steaks. But when you do the math, that's actually $7.50 per steak. You'd pay 10 times that in a restaurant. This has 30 grams of protein per steak, and it gets an S tier. Now here we have an insane protein per dollar ratio, but very bad in the protein test. The Costco Kirkland pizza. What I mean by the insane grams of protein, has 25 grams of protein per serving, but 500 calories and 25 grams of fat. So you're getting 1 gram of protein per 1 gram of fat. That's a really risky situation. You don't want to be in that situation. Eggs. Eggs actually don't make the protein per calorie ratio, but to be honest, they're really good in protein, like you obviously know, and the fat stored in eggs actually comes from the egg yolk. So if you want to avoid the egg yolk, you might just go for egg whites, but egg whites are really low in fat, and to be honest, both of them separate is not that good. So when you mix both of them, you actually get an S tier breakfast. So they both go in the package. Here we have Kirkland Extra Lean Cooked Ham. It might be considered processed meat, but this has 20 grams of protein for 120 calories. Crazy ratios. B tier though. Although the Italian sausages are incredible in protein, they're really high in calories and fat. It's a better alternative than the hot dog sausages, but they still fall in the C tier. Crazy S tier item. 20 grams of protein per serving for 1 gram of fat and 110 calories. You really can't go bad with this fish, and it actually does not taste like fish. It doesn't smell bad, and if you season it, a bit of salt, a bit of whatever sauce, tastes really good and definitely goes in the S tier, and you can make yourself an S tier cut meal with this. Definitely goes in the cart. Now here we have a very interesting one. Vector cereal, the protein scam if you ask me. When you look at the macros, you actually get surprised about how they advertise here high protein, but they actually don't even have high protein. Here the macros are mixed with milk, so Basically, without the milk, you get 0 grams of protein in the cereal itself. But the advertising here that says high protein, huge scam. Don't get fooled for this. And plus, it has a bunch of sugar. I don't even have to explain myself for this one. Cottage cheese, 13 grams of protein on your toast. Can't go wrong at breakfast for this one. Easy A tier. Maybe even S tier. Oikos Pro, B tier. Beats the protein test, and I guess if you're a yogurt lover, it's not that bad. But for me, deserves a B tier.